Welcome to In the News for October 20th, 2023. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Good morning, Brett.
Good morning, Jeff. It's a new day, a new week, new Apple stuff. Actually, and a new sponsor. We just want to say thank you quickly to our sponsor for this episode, Lit Software, that make the TrialPad apps and the TranscriptPad apps. We will talk a little bit more about them here in just a moment, but we happen to be very, very big fans of
Indeed.
these apps, and you'll hear why. You'll hear why in a little bit. But let's jump into some 3D awkward reactions. I think we talked about this, I remember, or a few weeks ago, or maybe we didn't talk about this in the podcast, but before we started recording, Jeff, I remember once I had upgraded to Mac OS Sonoma, because I use my MacBook here for recording our podcast, and I remember I just started like holding up a peace sign or a thumbs up in my screen, and all of a sudden, I had fireworks behind me, or balloons started happening. In fact, I can do it right now. If I just hold up a peace sign, there's balloons that are floating in my background. Now, we use Zoom to record this, and it was interesting. You can use Zoom for some virtual backgrounds and other things, but this was a technology built into the new Mac OS Sonoma. And when it came out, I thought, well, this is so fun. I love to have fireworks happening behind my head, but as usual, there is another side to this, and people have been reporting on it. It could be a little awkward depending on what kind of a meeting that you might be in at the time when those fireworks happen.
Two things that people should know about this feature, and one of them is the one that's on the article, but another one is something that you and I just sort of discovered this morning. But let's start with this article.
Yes.
Folks have mentioned, and I've heard this independently from different people, so it's not like this has happened to one person, everybody's reporting on it. People use video for, do all sorts of things, silly podcasts like us, or talking to friends and family. But some people use it for much more serious things like a business meeting, or and with the telemedicine, talking to a psychiatrist or a therapist or something like that. And people have noticed that because Apple introduced this new technology that if you have various hand motions, it will make, somewhat silly things happen on the screen, that you might have a point where you're talking to your therapist about something that's really serious. And just because you happen to indicate thumbs up, maybe in sort of a mocking way, suddenly you've got balloons or fireworks or whatever going off around you, and it just seems really appropriate, and it could actually sort of ruin the mood of it. And so it's really sort of a public service announcement that people should know that this is there. The thing that the most important part of it is that it is there by default. I mean, that's the key. When you update your iPhone or when you update your Mac, it will just start happening, and you can turn it off. But if you don't do anything about it, or more importantly, if you don't know about it, which I think is going to be the situation for many people, suddenly you may not realize that, whether you purposefully put your hands into a heart or just sort of happen to put your hands in a gesture that was misinterpreted that way, you're going to have hearts floating up your screen. And the thing is, it's not just in FaceTime. It is across every app. And the reason for that is because Apple has baked this in to the actual camera. So when an app like Zoom or Microsoft Teams or anything else, it just thinks it's getting the regular camera. But what it doesn't know is that Apple has pre-processed it in some good ways, in some ways to sort of boost the image and make it better, but also to sort of add this overlay. So it's not like, there's nothing to turn off in Zoom. I think if this happens to many people and they're in a Zoom call, for example, they will immediately start looking for the Zoom thing to turn it off. There is no Zoom thing to turn it off.
And to your point, just quickly, like it used to be like there were certain reactions, and there's even like, you could put a mustache on yourself in Zoom, and Microsoft Teams had different tools, and like Skype had different tools, and FaceTime had different tools. But to your point, Jeff, that's the thing is this is baked into the actual camera. So this goes across all of these applications, which is kind of fun. So it'll happen in any of these applications. But you're right. Like if you didn't know about it, if somebody didn't tell you about it, and I think that's one of the points here that Jason Snell made. It's like if Apple maybe should have done a little bit of a better job of like warning people like, hey, this is new, it's fun, it's exciting, but you might want to just make sure you're in the right environment, the right scenario before you do a thumbs up there.
What it reminds me of, Brett, is during sort of the height of the pandemic, when all of us
Yeah.
lawyers were doing Zoom court hearings, there was, of course, the
Right.
infamous lawyer cat. You know, the
The
guy, the
lawyer
attorney
cat.
from Texas that
Exactly.
said
Yep.
he looked like a cat face, and he said, "Your Honor, I am not a cat," in such a
I,
deadpan way that it became a meme across the internet. It was so funny,
of
and
course.
he was a good spirit about the whole thing. But that was an example of his secretary had turned on a feature on the computer that, much like this Apple
Yeah.
feature, it applied
That's
to the
right.
camera before it even got to Zoom. But that was just on one computer. This is something that Apple has put on all iPhones and all. I
Right.
think I can't remember it's on the iPad, but it's definitely on iPhones. It's definitely on the Mac. So,
Yeah.
so it's something
Right.
to think about.
Right.
And then one other thing that you and I were talking about is that because it's baked in to the camera, if you're using another app like Microsoft Teams or Zooms or WebEx or any of these other ones, any effects that they do are on top of it, and it might not be in a way that's
Yeah.
complementary. Because as you and I were discussing right now, if folks are watching the YouTube version of this, you are
Yeah.
out of the office right now, you're in a hotel room, so you've got a blurred
Right.
background
Right.
on you,
A blur
which
background.
means
That's
that
right.
if you make one of these special effects, like, the hearts or the balloons, when the heart of the balloon is over your face, it's going to be clear. But as soon as
Yeah.
it crosses into the background, it's going to be blurry
It
because
blurs
you
it
have a
out. That's
blurred
right.
background. And likewise, if
Yeah.
you put a fake background behind you to make it look like you were on a beach somewhere,
Yeah.
everything that's being replaced by that fake background is going to cover up the Apple effect, which means that then not only is this the Apple effect perhaps surprising, but it's even more confusing because it's not even complete. It's like,
Right.
what did you even see there?
Right.
So it's just
Well,
there's a lot of things to
I'm
keep
going to
in
try
mind.
it. So I'm going to do double peace signs here,
Mhm.
and that should be there's confetti. And you're right.
Yes.
If the confetti
The
is
confetti is,
falling
yeah,
in front of my face, I see
looks
it.
great.
Okay, I want to try this real quick. I'm going to turn off. I'm going to turn off blur my background. So now there's no blur
Okay.
background. So double peace sign here.
Mhm.
Oh, and look at that.
And now it
like
looks
it's so much
more
nicer.
clear. Exactly.
Yeah,
It's actually a very
exactly.
nice. To its credit, Apple has done a nice job with these effects
It
because
looks great.
they're
You're
actually
right.
3D. They're 3D effects. Apple is using its sense of depth to have some of the
I'm going to do
balloons, some of the
some
confetti
lasers.
appear behind you, and some of it appear to be in front of you. So it's
Right.
actually. As I'm trying to talk seriously and you're having lasers appear behind me,
I know.
I can totally understand
I
the
want
idea, though,
fireworks.
that it
I
can
know.
be fireworks. It can definitely be distracting to the person that you're talking to, or even to yourself if you
Right.
surprise yourself. So it's, I like the effect. It gets a quote unquote thumbs up from me, but I and I'm recording on a PC right now, which is why I'm not doing the silly effects that Brett is doing. But I do think it's a huge PSA that people need to know
Yeah.
what's going on so that they can turn it off. And keep in mind
Yeah.
that on the iPhone, to turn it off, I think you actually have to be in a video conference in the first place in order to turn it
Okay.
off. So if you're going to
Okay.
have a business meeting, in
Interesting.
an hour, you might want to first have sort of a dummy meeting, either with yourself. You could sometimes have a meeting with yourself, or
Right,
set up
right.
a meeting
Turn
with
it
somebody
on
that
and
you
try it.
know, so that once you're in the video mode, you can then go to the control center and turn it off, and then it will be
Right.
off. I wouldn't be surprised to see Apple tweak this in the future because of this. I mean, as you remarked, I linked to an article from Jason Snell, who he suggested that Apple put some big warning on the screen so that people know what's going on. So it's
Okay,
just something
I've stopped goofing off here and trying all the different the signs. Okay, but how do we turn it off? Yeah, I think you said that in your last paragraph. Like, how can people turn this off if they want to turn it off across all of the apps?
When
here?
you're on a Mac, I believe there is like a green box at the top of your screen.
There is.
Which
That's right.
controls
In the menu bar.
effects.
Uh-huh.
And then if you click
Yep.
on that, you'll see an option to control those effects. And then you can
Okay.
click in there. It's called the option. I don't have I'm not in a Mac. So what is it called? It's called I forget what it's called. And then on the iOS,
Video effects. I think it's
Video
video
effects.
effects.
Thank you.
Or something
And
to
then
that. Yeah.
on iOS, when you're using your phone and you're having a video call,
Yeah.
go to your control center, which is either a swipe up from the right on modern iPhones, or
Right.
it's coming up from the bottom on older iPhones. And once you're in the control center with all those little doodads, you will see one that only appears when you're in a video call for the camera, and then you can go through there and you can go through the video effects. So that's how you turn it off.
Okay.
It's really not the most intuitive way to do it. Apple has
No,
a page
it's
which
not,
is showing
actually.
off right now. That's
right.
just how to get to control center, but it's
But that's where
I
you're
wouldn't say
supposed to go. Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's hidden, but it's certainly not intuitive as to how to go in there and turn it off.
Yeah, this is like I said, when that first came out, and I know everybody was like playing around with them, and it's really cool. But I figured there was going to be some instance, some scenario where people were going to be like, well, maybe not so quick. And sure enough, these are good. This article from The Verge is one that we're referencing here. And then I thought Jason Stone did a really good job of talking about it too. Because I mean, I do that all the time, Jeff. You just give it like a quick thumbs up. And by the way, it isn't immediate. Like you have to have your thumb up for like like maybe 2 seconds or something like that. So it's not immediate. So I know I've taken to the practice where I've left my effects on, and if I do a thumbs up, I do it real quick, and then I bring it down.
Then you're safe.
But it just might be something, again, it's like you said, public service announcement, and people just be cognizant of that. Next week, iOS 17.1. We're already doing 17.1, which I got to tell you, I'm still enjoying iOS 17. And we know this because all of you good folks have been listening to us for a while, that even if we talk about the next iteration of the iOS, there's already 2 or 3 that people have been working on, and some even developer betas and public betas. And so this was a great article from 9 to 5 Mac about the 17.1 iOS features that are expected to come out next week.
For the last few years, Apple has been following a consistent trajectory. First, they have the big operating system update, like in our case, iOS 17. And then about a month later, they fix some bugs that they've discovered and add a couple features that weren't fully baked when the big iOS update came out, and they're ready now. And that's the 0.1 update. And then by the 0.2 update, which is about 2 or 3 months into it, that's the one where Apple typically adds the new emoji. And that's important because so many people update their iPhone specifically to get all the new emoji. And Apple figures by the time we're at the 0.2 update, everything is, we've gotten all the flaws kicked out.
Yeah,
so
that's
we
a
are
great
right
point.
now at the 0.1.
Yeah.
Now, normally you and I would not be announcing beforehand that we know that 0.1 is coming out next week. The only reason we know this is it's a little funny. France had a regulatory action against Apple that not the current iPhones, but the iPhone 14s were emitting. They thought it was too much, I don't know, some radiation or something like that. And so Apple worked out an agreement with France to tweak that, and it was going to be in iOS 17.1. And apparently Apple told France, the government, that it was going to be out next week. And so France told the world. And so that's the only reason that we know that there's an iOS update. Yeah, thank you, France, for the leak there. So, but anyway, the article, there's a number of new features coming out that we've talked about before that were going to be cool. Like, for example, one of them is that you can start doing an airdrop. And we talked about this when iOS 17 come out. You could start doing an airdrop with someone when you're close by, and then you could separate from each other and it would continue over Wi-Fi. That's something that was not part of iOS 17.0, but it's going to be around for 17.1. And then there's also things that fall within the tweaks category. For example, one of the cool things about the new iPhones, the iPhone 15 Pro, is that you have the action button on the side instead of the sleep-wake switch. But some people noticed that when their iPhone was in their pocket, they would accidentally hit the sleep wake button and cause it to do whatever, turn on the camera or something like that. And so Apple has made it, if I understand this correctly, that using the sensor, if it sees that it's in a pocket, like if there's something close to it, and then it will require you to press the button for a little bit longer before it triggers, just to try to prevent accidental triggering. So it's those sorts of things. It's a mix of features and fixing some things that once the iPhone's been out in the wild, people are realizing, hey, maybe we could do a better job on some of this stuff.
Even a flashlight indicator in the dynamic island.
So that's something interesting. That is actually already on the iPhone 15 Pro, but for some reason on the iPhone 14, even though you could have a flashlight turn on and off, there's no indicator in the dynamic island, and so Apple's decided that doesn't have to be unique to the newest iPhones. So so all these little tweaks.
I'm happy to report that is correct, because I don't know if you can see, I have my brand new natural titanium iPhone 15 Pro in my hand, and sure enough, the club. I cannot believe I'm turning the flashlight on, so I know that's another dynamic video effect
quite
there.
Obnoxious, yes.
But sure enough, I see the flashlight indicator in the dynamic island. Just as a quick mini review, this is fantastic. The iPhone 15 Pro, absolutely amazing. Just, obviously you and I are somebody that upgrades every year, but I'm not going to say significant, but it is tangible speed updates and improvements, I would say, from the iPhone 14 Pro. Like, sometimes I just can't, I keep thinking to myself, Jeff, how can it get a little bit better, and it's just little minor tweaks. So yeah, anybody coming from like an iPhone 12 or 13 or something else, you're going to really enjoy the iPhone 15 Pro. So,
one thing that you and I
good
were
on that.
texting each other about earlier this week, Brett, is you have the 15 Pro and I have the 15 Pro Max. So mine's a little
Yes.
bigger, but both of our Pros
Yes.
have this. It's the titanium, which is nice because of weight reasons, but also
Right.
what Apple has done with the edge of the phone, it's a little smooth. It's one of the best iPhones in the hand that
I
Apple has
agree.
done in many, many, many years. If you get the Pro model with the titanium, there's a number. I mean, it's not just the weight. It really does feel like a premium product. And you and I were both texting to each other about how much we both appreciate it. I'll also tell you, I got the black iPhone because I've always gotten the black one, but the titanium that you have looks really nice. I mean, it almost looks like that's sort of what it's supposed to be. It's a really good looking color.
To your point on I have always purchased a case and immediately put my iPhone in the case as soon as I open it up. And I have the MagSafe case from the Apple. But you know what? I hesitated for like a day before I put it in the case because exactly what you're talking about, Jeff. It felt a little bit better. Like I really enjoyed holding it. Now I put the case on when I travel. I got to find a way how to quickly get it in and out of the case. I think you do this, right? You'll take yours out of the case quite often. I usually never take it out of the case, but I want to. Like I really enjoy just holding it for what it was. Like I want titanium in my hand, which is important. How about a new Apple Pencil?
Indeed.
Well, yeah, new pencil, but sort of old technology. You had a great post on this past week, and Apple indeed introduced a brand new Apple Pencil. I don't know if I would recommend it for a lot of people, Jeff. Please explain to us where it fits in the line.
If you already have an Apple Pencil, then you know how valuable it is. But if you don't already have an Apple Pencil, it's probably because you thought it wasn't worth it for you. And so this actually might be the perfect one for you. What this is it's a new entry level, i.e. more inexpensive Apple Pencil. So instead of spending $129 like I have for my Apple Pencil second generation, this one's only $79. So you save $50.
All right.
And that under $100 price tag, that's the sort of thing that it could be almost like even appropriate, Christmas or Hanukkah presents. It's to that point that you can, get it for yourself, get it for somebody else. More than $100, I can see people going away from that. I love my Apple Pencil. I use it every day.
Me too.
For taking handwritten notes. As a lawyer, I'm annotating documents. I'm highlighting things all the time. I just love it. But I know that and of course I talk to people all the time that say the same thing. But I also frequently talk to lawyers and other professionals who say, nah, I don't really think I need a stylus. And I'm often like, don't you read documents? Don't you want to annotate things? And they're like, well, I don't know if I would use it that much. And so I know that there is a huge segment of the population which has not yet seen the advantages of having a stylus. True. And so for those people, you don't have to get a stylus from Apple. You can get cheaper ones from other companies. I've long been a fan of the ones that Adonit makes, but Apple's really are superior. They have the best technology. They do it's the fastest. Like when you touch the pencil tip to the screen, there is just no lag at all. So it really has the illusion of you actually writing with a pencil or a pen on the screen. Because this one's cheaper, it lacks some more advanced features. For example, it lacks pressure sensitivity, which I know is important to graphic artists. That's not me, so it doesn't matter to me. But for people that use a pencil for drawing things, for cartooning, for sketching, if you're at all in the graphics art, this is really not the pencil for you. But if you're just looking to write on documents and stuff like I do, that doesn't really matter. Now you do also lose some things like the other big one is the double tap feature, which I like because I will often be writing something
all
like
the time.
Taking notes in a conference and then you want to erase. I just, double tap and then it switches to the eraser and I can erase. And then in fact, the program that I use, Good Notes, after you erase and pick up your pencil, it automatically switches back to the regular pen. So I just double tap to go into the eraser mode, not out of the mode. But still, I like that feature. But again, could I live without it? Sure. I mean, if I didn't have it, I could just tap the eraser icon to turn it into an eraser. That would be fine. And so, if you already have an Apple Pencil, you know what the value is. But if the reason that you've been waiting is you just weren't sure if it was worth it, this might be worth checking out.
Maybe I'm too deep into the ecosystem, Jeff, like you. Like I could not imagine being without the Apple Pencil 2. Even when was that? It's already 3 years old or something, right? I mean, the Apple Pencil 2 has been out for a long time, but it is still amazing to me how well that I can write. And I could not do without. It's almost muscle memory now, the double tap on that Apple Pencil 2. But you're right. I guess this is, I mean, we still have the Apple Pencil 1, right? Which has the little cap on the end.
Yeah.
And
that's
you can
only
take
for
that
people
little
that
cap
have
off.
lightning. Yeah.
Correct, because it plugs into the lightning port on the iPad and it charges. But you mentioned this, and I know you linked to another story by Jason Snell as well, where this Apple Pencil USB-C, I guess that's what it's called, right? So it's like the mid entry, it's the the middle tier Apple Pencil, but it doesn't have lightning because there is an iPad Pro that doesn't have the magnetized charging dock for the Apple Pencil on the side. So there's no way if you had an Apple Pencil 1, you couldn't charge it really at that point. I mean, I know there's adapters, and anyway, I know I'm really kind of getting into the weeds at this point now because if to me, and I think Jason Snell made it is confusing. Jason Snell makes that same point. Yeah.
You just called this the mid-level. It's not the mid-level. It really is the low level. This is the cheapest Apple Pencil you can get. The original Apple Pencil costs $99, so it's $20 more than this one. So this one is less expensive, but this is really anyone. If you have an iPad with USB-C, this is made for you. It's a very simple thing.
Think about it.
Do you have USB-C? This is the one that you get. And if you have the disadvantage of it is because it sticks to the top magnetically, but it doesn't charge magnetically. So you still have to use a USB-C cord to charge it, which is no fun. But fortunately, Apple Pencils can go a long time between charges. So it does have those disadvantages, but it's cheap.
I feel like if you don't have an Apple Pencil, go and get this one for $79. Use it for a week. Understand how incredibly useful it is, and then go trade it in for an Apple Pencil 2.
Or perhaps better yet, Brett, wait a little bit because as you pointed out, the Apple Pencil 2 has been out for a long time. It actually came out in 2018. It was 5 years ago.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
In my heart, believe that Apple is going to come out with a third generation Apple Pencil. And when that happens, then I think there will be an even more clear differentiation between the low end Apple Pencil. Maybe they'll call that one that called the Apple Pencil. Maybe the new one will be called the Apple Pencil Pro. Who knows? So we'll see.
You just really, really, really want that to be true. And I do too, my friend.
And if I keep saying it,
it'll be true. I think I've talked in the past about how it's hard for me to understand the wattage and the voltage of things. I'm just not an electrical engineer of any kind. Another word that has thrown me off for many years is gigahertz. I mean, I understand when we talk about gigahertz, it's typically in the Wi-Fi routers, right? We used to have 2.5 gigahertz. We had 5 gigahertz. Well, now, thankfully, apparently the FCC just approved a 6 gigahertz band for Wi-Fi tethering. This isn't necessarily something you're going to take advantage of, I don't think, from like a Wi-Fi network, but it could be advantageous for, I think in this story, they're talking about like for AR uses, right? Or it could be for some very specific uses here that they could use it for.
Yeah, so let me explain what's going on here. For a long time, we've had the regular Wi-Fi network. It's been, I think it was originally approved by the FCC, in the 1980s. But, Wi-Fi became a thing sort of in the late 90s. Apple was an innovator in it. And for the past 20 years, although we have had those two bands, it's been sort of that original type of Wi-Fi. The 6 gigahertz spectrum, which wasn't even possible until some technical things that are above my head. But once they figured out how to take advantage of it, it actually offers like 4 times the bandwidth of the spectrums that we've been using so far. Wow. And when you have so much more bandwidth, that means there's less interference between devices. It means you can have devices that use multiple streams at once to be faster. So it is a huge, huge deal. So the FCC, once they had the technology for it and FCC did its testing in the United States, they approved it, I think effective 2020. And the first thing that you saw for a couple of years, and they're out today, are these Wi-Fi 6, because it's called Wi-Fi 6 routers. So you could, for example, get an Eero, and they're expensive. They're not cheap, but you can get an Eero that uses Wi-Fi 6. And so that means that although your device is not going to, like your iPhone is not going to have Wi-Fi 6, the different Eeros can talk to each other using Wi-Fi 6 and spread that internet throughout your house really fast. But that's all that we've had for the past couple of years. What the FCC approved this week was using the 6 gigahertz spectrum for individual devices. Could be an iPhone, could be a computer, or could be like a virtual reality device, which is sort of, the next thing, like the Apple Vision Pro coming out next year. And this is important because of what the FCC approved. It's got to be in a relatively small area. So it's not like a router could be across your entire house. But if you're within like a car, or if your VR device is relatively close to something else, it can take advantage of these really fast, really efficient, not a lot of interference speeds. So to get back to what you said, Brett, are you going to take advantage of this today? No, but now it's approved. And so you got to think that over the next couple of years, much like it took a few years for when the routers could do it before when they started doing it, in a few years, you're going to start to see consumer devices and other devices that have Wi-Fi 6 support built in, and it's going to start. I've seen people say that this is the most revolutionary thing to happen to Wi-Fi in over 20 years. I mean, it's going to be big, but we're just on the precipice of it right now.
We're just laying the foundation on that.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you for explaining. That's very helpful. Jeff, I know you like your Apple Watch. I also know that you like your Apple Watch bands. And you trade them out, I think, every day, if I'm not mistaken.
I do.
I didn't know that this was a thing, but I talked to many other people, and now I've started doing that. If I work out, I have one band that I use. If I go into the office, I switch to another band. Now, thankfully, one of our favorite companies that makes some accessories for the iPhone and iPad, TwelveSouth, they now have the time porter. And as silly and as obnoxious as this looks, I cannot wait to get one, Jeff. Thanks for spending my money today.
It's a cute little strip for $30, and you can get a couple of them if you want. And you can either put them on a wall, or they have some examples in the video where it's inside of a cabinet door. So you open up the cabinet door and you can see it. But it allows your Apple Watch bands to sort of hang there very nicely.
So good.
So that, and the video is hilarious, Brett, because there's a part near the end of the video where somebody walks into their closet, and much like a gentleman might choose out what time I
here he is. Yeah, right here.
He goes like, which Apple Watch brand shall I wear today? Which I just think is really funny.
What's going to match with my shirt today?
Exactly. But I do that a little bit too. I have my Milanese loop that I wear at work every day.
Yeah.
But when I get home, I take off the Milanese loop, and I usually put on a solo band, either my green one or my blue one. Sometimes I put on one of my other bands. But I definitely feel like, because like you say, when you're working out and you're sweating and stuff, you don't want to have a metallic band on you. It's nicer to have something that's the rubbery sort of like the solo loop, the poly, whatever it's called. So
I love it.
Now, I might not be to the extreme of this person who's got like,
I know he's got like 4. But... I know, but you could though, Jeff. That's the thing. And when you do, you now have the ability to hold this. The first thing I thought of is, there's a world of people that have that is foreign to me, but they have closets of designer shoes, for example, right? And they go in and they can pick which pair of shoes that they want. I prefer to choose which Apple Watch band that I'm going to want. But, on a quasi-serious note about this, there are, like, my wife has like a little holder for different jewelry and necklaces, right, on her little credenza or so that, she can see which one do I want to buy. Because I have a few Apple Watch bands, but I got them in a drawer somewhere, and I got to rummage through them all the time. I mean, as silly as this looks like initially, of course, I've got to have one. It's called the Time Porter. I just think that's great. How about some generative hot dogs? That's not Stephen Hackett's title. That's mine, because I thought this was a really neat article that you linked to. Generative AI fill in Photoshop feels like magic. I really do feel for his wife, and maybe for Stephen if he gets some pushback on this. But he had a lovely picture of his wife in a hot dog suit.
As one does.
As one does. And he likes it, but he didn't like the background of it. He wanted to use this picture, it looks like, as a contact card or as a picture on his lock screen, right, on the iPhone. And so he was able to modify the background of this picture with his lovely wife in a hot dog suit. And it looks really good. The end result looks really good. I'm sure he's going to pay for it, but it looks
it's not
good.
Just that he didn't like the background. And I've noticed this before. When you have a picture on a lock screen, whether it be like your just your pure lock screen picture, or the picture that you assign to a contact, so that if they're calling you, you will see their it used to be you see just a tiny little circle, but now you see the full width of the iPhone. So when you do that, if you just take a normal picture like the one that he has at the top, and if you make that the picture, what's going to happen is the top of your screen that has the time and widgets and stuff like that, it's going to be over the person's face.
Yeah, you want it.
So
yeah, exactly.
So what you need to have is additional space in the picture above the person's head.
Okay,
and
I see.
On a normal picture, whether it's a picture of your wife and a hot dog or pretty much any other picture you have of a person, because you weren't taking it with the intention of having all this extra space at the top, you're not going to have enough space there. And so this is what generative AI can do through the photographic tools of Photoshop and some other programs that allow you to do it. You can say, hey, Photoshop, you can see that the top of this picture is like some trees. Why don't you just continue the tree, make a tree top, and then put some blue sky above it. And that way, when I put that on my screen, the top portion of it, the blue sky that you've added through AI, and the tops of the trees, that part can be covered up by the time and the widgets and everything else. And then in the middle of the screen, I'll see the person's face and stuff. So it actually makes a lot of sense. And I've done this in the past in a very simplistic way. I'm looking across my office right now.
Yeah.
I have a picture that I took, gosh, I don't know, 10 years ago at the beach that's got members of my family who are no longer even alive. Oh, goodness, I'm cracking up. So I love that picture, right? Because it's got some grandparents, my mom and stuff. But when I put that picture into a 5x7 frame, because of the way I had taken it, it didn't I wanted it to be a certain size frame, but the picture wasn't the right dimensions. So I used Photoshop to just, and this is long before generative AI. So I did a okay version of it. I added additional blue sky so that the picture could be taller than it actually was, and it would fit in the frame. Now there was also a palm tree on the side, and so I had to extend the palm tree out and copy a part of the palm tree and paste it. So if you look really close, you can sort of see that there's a stump, and then the stump repeats, because it's a copy and paste in one stump on top of another.
But no one's going to look that close at it.
All people notice is it's a nice picture of the family that fits in the frame. So the idea of extending a picture to, whether it's horizontally or more often vertically, however you need to do it, you can do that so easily and in an incredibly realistic way by using this brand new generative AI. So I think that what Steven's done here is great, putting aside the fact that he also showed his wife in a hot dog costume, which I think is hilarious, but hopefully she has a good sense of humor. So
yeah, I did too. Okay, well, that is so much more helpful, because indeed I've done some lock screens and I want to use a picture of maybe my family or so, but sure enough, I just didn't want to take the time to fix it, because it'll be right over their face or their forehead. And I'm I don't want that. I want it down. So that makes a lot more sense now, Jeff. Thanks for explaining that. And this is this is in Photoshop. They call it generative AI fill-in. So in other words, you're filling in areas that that you may not want. On this picture here, they've got a bookshelf, but then they wanted to make it a jungle. Okay, that's making a lot more sense now, and that's really helpful.
I will tell you too, Brett, I've tried this on my Photoshop, and I mean, I'm not a Photoshop maven, but I don't have to know anything, and you click a few buttons and it works.
Yeah,
this is one of these things that's OMG, it is really incredible that it can do it.
I just remember, what is it, last week or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the Google photo, the Pixel tools and Google Photos. What a time, and I've heard other people talk about the concerns that we even brought up, was what is a picture anymore? If you could modify it and, put on the actual face gesture that, that you would, or facial expression that you want somebody to have if they were not smiling or something like that. And you just can create your own pictures now. It's such an interesting time.
It is. I don't have an ethical problem adding the blue sky that wasn't in the picture. Right. But you can definitely see where people say, well, maybe it's inappropriate what you're doing. It's a legitimate debate.
A quick related article you link to here is setting a custom contact poster on your iPhone that others will see when you call them. I got to tell you, I've just barely gone into my contact card. I know this is something new in iOS 17, I really wanted to do it. It's just, it takes a little bit of time. I feel like it takes a little bit of time. Okay, what picture do I want? What if I'm calling a professional contact versus, my family or my kids? I might want a certain picture. I don't know. I know there's some things that I want to figure out first on there, but this was a great article that you linked to from Gadget Hacks, that at least it'll help me kind of walk through if you want to do an emoji or you want a photo or something along those lines. I know I want to start seeing contact posters a little bit more. I want to create them for me, and then I also want to make sure that I have contact posters for other people that call me as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, good stuff on that. I know, my friend, we have talked about Apple TV quite a bit, and one of your favorite, I know this, which I still have not started.
I wrote this post
don't hate me.
For you.
I know.
If you didn't see it, hidden in this post is, if you haven't started watching the show yet, comma,
you explained it.
Bernie, comma, yes, one of my all-time favorite shows is for All Mankind. It starts back in the 1960s. It's an alternative history. What if the Soviets got to the moon first?
Yeah,
and season 1 takes place in the 60s. Season 2 takes place in the 80s. Season 3 took place in the 90s or 70s, 80s, and then season 4 is going to start to take place a little more. Eventually, it's going to get to the point where 90s, it's going to be in the future. Even beyond where we are now, when they get to season 5, and I don't know if that'll be the end or maybe beyond.
Cool. cool. Okay.
But so
No, that's
I
awesome.
think it was originally announced to be a 5-season arc if Apple picked it up for all 5 seasons, and they've certainly picked it up for the first
I'm
4.
sure they will.
So hopefully we'll have
Right.
5 too. So anyway, 3 weeks from today, Brett, season 4
Okay.
starts. So as I pointed
Yeah.
out, if you can binge a season a week, you'll be totally
You
caught
said
up.
that.
Or if you don't, just whenever you get around to it, it's a great show. And in all seriousness, anyone who hasn't
Yeah.
seen this, if you have access to Apple TV Plus, I just think it's a fabulous show. It does start
Yeah.
a little slow the first couple of episodes, but by the middle of season 1, it picks up.
Okay.
And then it's just nonstop through the end of season 1, season 2, season 3. Great fun stuff.
I did notice that you provided specific directions on how someone can get up to speed and be ready for season 4 November 10th. So thank you for that public service announcement there for all mankind. I did watch the trailer, this one, which is for season 4, and I was like, okay, that's really, really cool. Okay, I will do my best. I can't promise before November 10th, but I will do my best according to your instructions there. Let's talk about our sponsor, Lit Software. So Lit Software, we have known the developers of Lit Software for many, many years, Jeff, because one of the first times that you and I were even together presenting at conferences, typically legal conferences or, conferences for lawyers about using technology. We have been talking about the iPad and the iPhone, and one of, I would say, probably the premier app for legal professionals, so the apps for legal professionals has been from Lit Software. Everybody mostly knows this company for their TrialPad app, which is a presentation app that you can do a zoom in on a section. You can highlight text, in real time in a dynamic fashion, which I use not just for trials. Like, you don't even have to use it for trials. You can use it for all kinds of uses. But they have several other apps in their suite, and one is called TranscriptPad. They also have Doc Review Pad and Exhibits Pad. But TranscriptPad, now this is really getting a little bit more specifically to legal professionals and mostly lawyers, and more even more specifically to lawyers that go into litigation, because you have a lot of transcripts from depositions and from court proceedings and whatnot. And you need to review them. You need to review and read through this transcript, which typically comes from a court reporter, that kind of a thing. We have followed these apps for a long time. We are very big fans of Lit Software. In fact, I'm actually at a conference today, and I'm going to be giving an hour lecture on how to use the iPad in trial presentation. And guess what I'm going to talk about? I'm going to be talking about TrialPad here quite a bit. But one of the TranscriptPad is something you wrote about this on your iPhone JD blog this past week, Jeff. So I'm going to let you explain this a little bit. They have a pretty amazing update to the TranscriptPad app, which not only lets you read the text now, but you can synchronize a video of the deposition or a witness or whatever with the text of the transcript. This is pretty mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's really, really cool stuff. Let me say a little beginning stuff too, like you did. Lit Software has been around since the iPad itself was introduced in 2010.
Yeah.
They've been around for a long time. And if you're ever in a situation where you want to show things off, I mean, jurors now expected in trials that, of course, lawyers are going to use, some sort of a big screen to show things off. Even if you're not a lawyer, if you give presentations and you want to be able to have documents come up that you can zoom in on parts of it and highlight parts of it, I mean, you could use this no matter what your profession is. But TrialPad is really just by far the best for that. It's fantastic. But what I like about these Lit Software apps is that they are empowering. They allow people to do things that in the old days, or even in the current days, for people that don't know better, people would have to hire a separate graphics professional to be in charge of the graphics at their presentation, at their trial, at their wherever it is, to bring things up on the screen. You'd say, okay, now so-and-so, could you please bring up exhibit number 4? And then that person would do it. But when you have this in your own hand, it's just so empowering that you yourself can bring things up. And it allows you to look so much more professional. So that's my pitch for all of their apps. Now let's talk specifically about TranscriptPad.
Good. Well done.
So TranscriptPad for lawyers is when you have a deposition of someone and you get that transcript. Most of us, and I'm sort of guilty of the same thing for, I've been practicing law for, a long time now, since 1994, 30 years. And most of my transcripts have just been the text transcript. And TranscriptPad has been a fantastic app because it loads in the transcript. It automatically, you can have like all my questions bold and my answers not bold, so that as you're reading through it, you can see what's a question, what's an answer. And it's always had this fantastic feature that you can not just highlight in yellow or whatever color you want, but you can assign codes. So as I'm reading through the transcript, I can say this series of question and answers is relevant because it has to do with, the cause of the car accident. And then these questions and answers are relevant because they have to do with, the injury that the person suffered or whatever it is. And so at the end of the day, when you've gone through all your transcripts, you can very easily pull up the relevant parts that you need when you're preparing for trial. So, but that's always been just the black and white words. And something that's people have been doing for a while now is having videographers take a video of the deposition as well. And it does make a difference because we all know this from everyday life, that sometimes it's not just the words that a person says, it's the way that they say it. The black
Body
and white
language.
words may seem like it's just a straightforward answer. And then you listen to them and you can tell that the person is squirming or that the person's uncomfortable or the opposite. You can tell that the person's very, very confident. And so if they're now giving a different answer on the stand and you want to impeach them, a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth even more. When you can show that video, it's so much better. So what's really nice about TranscriptPad is they added this ability that when you have the video people will charge you if you want to sync up the video to the transcript. And people can routinely pay $75 an hour for that. But on its own, just the iPad itself is smart enough because of Apple's technology that it understands, it can translate words into text. Siri does that every day, right? And so if you just feed in the video and TranscriptPad, you're showing sort of like the little circle of, the percentage, 15%, 20%, 25, it will just go through and analyze the words in the video and it will sync them up to the words in the text. And it doesn't just do a simple pass. It uses sophisticated artificial intelligence so that even, for example, if the court reporter gets the word a little bit wrong, it will understand that and it will fix that so that it's still lined up. And so then once you have it in there, you can be looking at your transcript at the bottom of your screen, and at the top of the screen, as the transcript is moving and people are speaking, you will actually see the person talk at the top. And I've noticed as I've been playing around with this app that, because you're actually seeing them speak, you suddenly realize, wow, this passage of the transcript is even more important than I thought because of the emotions, the person, the body language, et cetera, et cetera. So just for looking at a transcript and preparing for trial, it's totally useful. But that's just the first part. The second part is that once you actually have it all synced up, you can then export video excerpts. Normally at a trial, you're not going to play the entire thing beginning to end, right? You're going to cut out the parts where lawyers have objections. You're going to cut out the parts that don't matter for trial. Or maybe if the witness is going to be there at trial, you actually only want like a little 1-minute segment to just impeach what they're saying. So what the app lets you do is find the little, take out the stuff you don't want, just leave in the stuff that you do want. And it has these really cool tools that you can edit very precisely where the video starts and where the video stops, and they show a waveform at the bottom. So for example, somebody might say, well, and then start the answer. If it's appropriate and you wanted to cut it this way, you can cut out the whatever, or maybe you want to leave that in there because of the impeachment, but you make those decisions. And with the waveform, you can see where each word is, where each cough is. So TranscriptPad, Lit Software has done this the right way. They took their time with this, and when they came out with it, I'm like, wow, this is their initial offering. You might expect this to be like the 2.0 or the 3.0 version of it. So it's really well done. So, I'm glad that Lit Software is sponsoring today. So any lawyers that are listening to this podcast or anyone that works with transcripts, it is a significant upgrade, and it's just part of the app. I mean, if you subscribe to their software and you get the app, you just get this new feature as just part of what you have. So I can't wait to see what they do. I'm sure they're going to find ways to tweak it in the future in ways that are far beyond my imagination. But what they have done today is really, really good. So bravo.
I'm old enough that I was one of those people in that seat, Jeff, that we call it a hot seater, right? Because the lawyers would turn around and say, bring this up or do that. And so as a trial presentation specialist, you have to know a lot of these different applications. And I will tell you, I remember doing this task, syncing a text transcript with a video by literally listening and watching the video
manually.
And at the end of every sentence, every line of the transcript, I would have to hit the space bar because I'm manually putting in like a time code for the video to tell the software. This was not TranscriptPad. This was a very old, this is other trial presentation software. It would tell the video like where where the area would be that you're syncing the text with the video. Anyway, just a very, very long, laborious process. But we had to do it. There was no other way to do it then. I mean, I'm literally doing it manually. I had to speed it up. It was like chipmunk style. Oh, it was just it was the pits. So just the fact that this is now built in, not even just to a computer, Jeff, but we can do this even on the iPad. Like, it's all built in. And by the way, it's also secure because it's doing it all on the actual iPad. You're not like sending it up to the cloud or anything. And I know that that's something that developers, Ian and Tara, were both very interested in as well. Anyway, thanks for describing. I just had to jump in because you all can tell that Jeff and I are pretty excited about this, and we're pretty passionate about this because these apps are really just done so very well. And if you just go to simply litsoftware.com, L-I-T software.com, you'll see all of the information is there about all of the different apps individually if you want to look at it, as well as if you wanted to drill down into one specific app. So anyway, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us because Jeff and I talk about this quite a bit. In the know. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to cheat a little bit and use one of my favorite TranscriptPad tips. Okay. So if you are listening to this and you already have the Lit Suite and you have the TranscriptPad, one of the great things about it is that you can actually search for words in the transcript. Now, that doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal. Like, okay, whatever. The thing is that you and I both know, Jeff, because a lot of the way lawyers use is they'll get one transcript, they'll open it up, maybe it's a PDF, maybe it's a text file, and they'll search just in that transcript. And that's good, and sometimes that's all that you might need. But there are times when I've got several transcripts across several witnesses, and I want to search across all of those transcripts at one time. There's ways to do it in a kind of a hackery fashion on your computer, but what I love about it in TranscriptPad, if you put them all into TranscriptPad, into one case file, then TranscriptPad is smart enough that if I'm drilled down into one specific transcript in TranscriptPad and I hit the search box up there in the very top left, it will search only that transcript in which I'm in. But if I go up a couple of levels to where I can see all of the transcripts, if I got 4 or 5 different transcripts in this particular case, and I tap the search box there, I'm not just searching one transcript, I'm searching across all of the transcripts. And what's even neat is that TranscriptPad will then give me a rundown, a breakdown of like, okay, transcript 1 has 18 hits. Transcript 2 has 53 hits of this particular word or phrase or something that I'm looking at. And then I can drill down into each one of those transcripts and look at it. And as you might know, there's a little button there that I can annotate the search results, which basically just creates a little report of or kind of highlights each of those little sections so I can just jump to them at a later time and maybe even include them in a full report that you can do out of TranscriptPad. So I feel like we're just scratching the surface. There's so much more that I like to work with when I'm working with lawyers in TranscriptPad and even TrialPad. But that's my tip for the day. If you have TranscriptPad, try that search function, whether it's just for a single transcript or multiple transcripts at one time.
Great tip. I do it all the time. My tip is for CarPlay. Maps in CarPlay.
Lovely.
Usually when you are driving someplace you don't know, or maybe you do know the directions, but you just want to have some assistance along the way, I love using CarPlay to sort of give me my directions. Every once in a while, I will have issues with CarPlay not knowing where it is. Now, for me, it happens consistently in one very specific place, which is my office. When I'm leaving my office, which is a big office tower, we have, I usually park 8-10 floors up in my office tower, and as I circle around my office building parking lot to get to the bottom and then leave, I find it often takes I don't know if I always assumed it was something about me spinning around and the GPS is not very good downtown New Orleans, that I would have to go many, many blocks before CarPlay realizes where it is. And if I just follow my CarPlay for those first couple blocks, it thinks I'm, 18 blocks away, or maybe not quite that far, but far away. And so it's not going to give me the right directions.
It's not where you
Eventually, by the time I get to like the Interstate 10 or something like that, it will have figured it out and be fine. But for those first couple blocks, it can be rough. Chance Miller wrote about this, that he's actually noticed this in other areas too, where they're just on the road and suddenly you can tell that the CarPlay has been totally confused. It may think that you're in one location, but you're actually many, many blocks away. So if you have this happen, what Chance has as a possible workaround is actually one that I've noticed too. And I will say this with some trepidation because it's not the safest thing to do. We all know you're not supposed to use an iPhone while you're driving, right? But I will tell you that if you do, open up your iPhone. And if you do open up the navigation app, whether it's Apple Maps or Google Maps or whatever one you're using, I have found that by opening up the app on the phone, it usually locks in the GPS location pretty quickly.
Oh,
But if you
okay.
don't do that, if you're just relying upon CarPlay to do it,
CarPlay, right.
it takes longer. And I've noticed this because of the parking lot of my office for years. Chance Miller notes here that he's noticed it for about the past year. So whatever it is,
Huh.
this doesn't happen a lot. It doesn't happen consistently. For me, I've never had it happen outside of my office environment. Chance Miller has had worse luck. But in whatever your personal situation is, if you find that there's a dead zone where you often get bad GPS, or if it just happens while you're driving, or better yet, happens while you're with somebody and they're driving, and you have access to their phone, if you open up the navigation app, that will usually help it to lock in. This is a bug, though, and I
Really
really hope that Apple
interesting.
can fix this,
Yeah.
because you don't want to have to, while you're
No.
driving, be distracted from the road and open up the Maps app on the iPhone. That's not a good solution, unless you're at like a red light or something like that, which I guess it's okay.
Right.
But so anyway,
I
that's the problem. If you're
Yeah.
out there and you've experienced it too, maybe this will help you work around it.
Yeah, he says he said this bug makes CarPlay almost unusable and dangerous. I have seen something similar. I would tell you, like when I go to a different city and rent a car, usually near the airport, right? Just like you, it's like a big parking garage or something, and I'll get to the exit, and like I don't know which way to turn. Like, which way do I turn? And sometimes what I've just done, I'm a little bit more lazy because I'm not going to pick up my phone. I'll just decide which way looks best, right? I'm like, I'm going to turn this way and just have some confidence that the map will catch up with me at some point and then reroute. Now, I'm not saying that's a better way to go, but that's when I have seen a little bit of frustration on this. And, now I guess I wouldn't really think about it because I'm like, okay, the map will have to just catch up with me. But now, yeah, that is frustrating. Like, why should I have to wait for that? Like, it should be a little bit more on point there. Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully
I'm
it
not
is
sure.
some kind of a software update or something. I don't know. I don't know if it requires better hardware or what, but yeah, now I'm frustrated more than I was before.
One more thing I mentioned, Brett, is that sometimes I don't really see this in metropolitan areas like New Orleans or another big city, but sometimes if you're out sort of in the middle of nowhere, you could have the opposite problem where the GPS in CarPlay knows exactly where you are, but
Right?
because your cellular connection is so slow or maybe non-existent, it has trouble
Oh,
downloading the
yeah.
maps.
That's
So it
right.
can't show the
That's
road.
right.
And for that, I will actually point people that one of the new features, and you and I mentioned in the past, that one of the new features of iOS 17 is that before your trip, you can actually say, I
Yeah,
want you to
download.
download, and you can control by
Right.
zooming in and out. Do I want it the whole area or just a small part? You can have your phone download maps, and then you can say, okay, if you've downloaded the map, how frequently do you want me to update those maps? And so that
Right.
way, if you're traveling to a small town and you're concerned that you might have some dead spots, you could just go in and download the
That's a
maps to
great
your
tip.
iPhone beforehand. And that way it can just use the local maps, regardless of whether, doesn't have not to download anything. And so as long as you can get a GPS signal, it knows where it's are. So that's sort of the opposite of the problem that we're talking about here,
Yeah.
though. That's where you do have GPS, but you don't have the map.
That's such a great tip. I'm going to give you a thumbs up on my screen
There you
here.
go.
Maybe a double thumbs up
Thank you,
too.
Apple, for the
Fireworks. I know.
fireworks.
We also want to thank our sponsor, and I'll turn my fireworks off for that, even though they're much worthy of fireworks. Lit Software. So
Yes, thank you.
litsoftware.com, Lit Software. You can go and find out a little bit more about their apps as well. Jeff, always thank you, my friend, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.